Welcome to Period 9 APUSH Exam Cram, 1991 to present, a new world order. This time period begins with the collapse of the Soviet Union, or USSR, in December 1990. The Soviet Union was facing a lot of political and economic problems internally, and so the leaders decided it was probably time to break the Soviet Union apart. So it broke primarily into Russia and a bunch of other smaller satellite countries. And this, of course, ended the Cold War that had preceded in American history for a long time. This new world order was coined by George H.W. Bush, more commonly known as Bush 41. During Bush's administration, he started the Gulf War when Iraq and Saddam Hussein invaded neighboring Kuwait. And in an attempt to push out Iraq from invading Kuwait, the United States and fellow UN member nations decided to form a coalition to drive out the Iraqi troops, and they eventually were successful. During this administration, the Bush administration also faced different problems, such as ethnic cleansing in the Balkans. Groups such as Muslims faced different types of persecution, such as genocide in this area during this time. The next president was Bill Clinton. He was a moderate Democrat, and he had a few ideas that he really got passed. One was a balanced budget. This was the idea that the government should not incur extra debt. And during his administration, he was able to balance out the national debt, and actually the government produced surplus where they took in more money than they spent. And the government had extra money that they didn't really know what to do with during this time. Also passed was the Nafta, or North American Free Trade Agreement. This agreement was with Canada and Mexico and eliminated a lot of trade barriers to trade, such as tariffs. This was a Republican-pushed idea that really helped to promote more trade in North America. He also helped to pass welfare reform, which was another thing that Republicans really wanted to push for during this time. He passed the Personal Work Responsibility Act, and this was a welfare reform where people couldn't just easily get welfare checks anymore. They usually had to be in a dire condition, such as a young mother or in other problems, and welfare had to be limited, so they couldn't have unlimited welfare, kind of like before what had happened. George W. Bush came next. He actually fought in a very tough election with Al Gore in 2000. Eventually, he came out decisive when Florida, which the governor was Jeb Bush, his brother at the time, decided that he got the electoral votes needed to win the election. And so once he won, he was able to promote his ideals. But not soon after he won, 9/11 happened. This terror attack really helped to shape American foreign policy in the next century. So during this time, the United States and the Bush administration decided that they needed to do more to create stability in the Middle East so terrorist attacks would be less likely to happen. And one place where they decided to fight was Iraq. So there was another Iraq war, and this was known as the Second Gulf War. Once again, Saddam Hussein was in power, and Bush really thought that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction that could be used against Western allies. So he and UN troops went in and tried to topple Hussein, and they were successful. Unfortunately for Bush, no weapons of mass destruction were ever found. So the war, some believe, is unsubstantiated. There was also a big war in Afghanistan. This was mainly dealing with 9/11. So Osama bin Laden, the mastermind behind this attack, actually was from Afghanistan. And so the Bush administration wanted to topple al-Qaeda, which was the radical militant group who was in charge of Afghanistan at the time, and take them down in order to prevent future terrorist attacks. During this time, the Patriot Acts were also passed in 2001 and 2003. This allowed for more government surveillance and wiretapping of citizens in this digital age to better enable the government to try to find out these terrorist plots before they actually happen. At the end of the Bush administration came the Great Recession in 2007, where subprime mortgages and bad loans started to contribute to a housing bubble burst, and this eventually caused different people to face foreclosures and lose their houses, and bad mortgages contributed to a big recession in the next administration. In addition to needing to recover from the recession, Barack Obama was the next person elected. He was elected in 2008, and the big thing that he passed during his 8 years in office was the Affordable Care Act, the ACA, better known as Obamacare. This tried to guarantee all Americans fair access to healthcare insurance because many Americans were uncovered by insurance and didn't have healthcare. This was really hated by a lot of Republicans because they thought it was inefficient and it didn't always help people get good prices on the insurance they need. And even till today, there's a big debate on how effective Obamacare is. This mandated that people get insurance, so then they would at least have insurance, and if they ever had to go to the hospital, they wouldn't necessarily have to keep going to the emergency room because they couldn't afford a regular appointment at the doctor's office. After 8 years of Obama, of course, came Donald Trump, who was elected in 2016. This was a shift in conservatism where many Republicans and also old blue-collar workers who worked in factories in the Rust Belt got tired of the broken promises made by the Democrats, and they were really being swept up by this new globalization. And so they voted Trump in to try to fix these issues. So far, this is the third year of Trump, and I guess we'll see what U.S. history will be written in the future about these few years of the Trump administration and this new conservatism. The tech boom was the mainstay of this shift from the 20th to the 21st century. So at the turn of the century, tech really started to grow. This was the age of the internet, where the World Wide Web really started to develop. And as we see today, much of our lives are still connected to the internet. This also gave rise to different tech companies such as Google, Yahoo, and Microsoft, and also different types of online shipping and online shopping such as Amazon. This eventually led to globalization, as seen here, where different parts of the world are really just more connected because the internet can send information and communication so fast. In America, socially, new immigration started to come during this time. Instead of a lot of European immigration during this time, we see more immigration from other parts of the world that were historically low immigration numbers to America. These places included Asia, so like China, Japan, Korea, and also Southeast Asia like Vietnam, also Latin America, and especially Mexico, where different groups of people really wanted the opportunities just north of the border. And this also contributed to heavy proportions of illegal immigration, which is a very contested topic today in the Trump administration. Overall, Hispanics were the biggest group that took part in this new migration, and Hispanics at the turn of the century represented the largest minority group, and very soon they're expected to be one of the largest groups in America, overtaking whites in some regards. So this has been APUSH Period 9, 1991 to present, the New World Order. Thanks so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and share these videos with your friends. And best wishes on the APUSH exam.